You talk to yourself more than anyone else. All day long, a constant voice in your mind narrates your life, commenting on your appearance, feelings, and performance, evaluating whether you're good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. And here's the thing, you don't even realize it's happening. It's just background noise, but it's the most powerful force in your life. Because the voice you hear most is your own. This internal monologue becomes the basis for how you see yourself, how you behave, and ultimately, how you live. Let me tell you something most people never consider. Your self-talk is shaping your identity. The words you repeat, even subconsciously, become the story you believe. And your brain, it listens. It doesn't argue or say, "Hold on, that thought isn't helpful." It simply absorbs. So if every time you make a mistake, you call yourself an idiot, your brain starts to believe it. It hardwires that belief. If you look in the mirror in the morning and think, "Ugh, I look awful," that thought sticks. It becomes a lens through which you experience the rest of your day. This isn't just a bad habit, it's a pattern. And that pattern becomes your personality. The truth is, we all have a mental playlist running in the background. Some have empowering playlists that say, "You've got this. You're growing. You're strong." But most people are playing the same tired, self-defeating tracks repeatedly. "I can't do this. I'm not ready. I always mess up. No one cares what I have to say." It's not because you're broken, it's because your brain is wired for survival, not success. That inner voice is trying to keep you safe, not help you grow. It's the part of your mind that fears failure, judgment, and risk. But when that becomes your default voice, you don't live, you shrink. Now, imagine what would happen if you changed that voice for just 3 days. What if every time you caught yourself thinking something critical or harsh, you paused and said something different, something encouraging, something true? What if instead of, "I'm not good enough," you said, "I'm learning. I'm trying. That's enough." Instead of, "I always screw up," you said, "Mistakes are a part of growth." You wouldn't just feel better, you'd start showing up differently because your thoughts create your feelings drive your actions, and your actions shape your reality. Let's talk about the science for a second. Your brain is plastic, meaning it changes based on what you do and what you repeat. Every thought you think fires a neural pathway. Repeat it enough, and that pathway becomes a strong, automatic second nature. So when you feed your brain negativity, it builds strong highways of self-doubt. But when you feed it confidence, optimism, and resilience, you start building new pathways. You're literally rewiring your brain to believe better things about yourself. And here's the kicker, it doesn't take years. You can start changing the narrative in just a few days of intentional focus. That's how powerful your self-talk is. The reason this works is that your brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. If you constantly tell yourself you're overwhelmed, your brain will react as if you are. Your heart rate goes up, your stress increases, and your ability to think clearly drops. But if you say, "I can handle this, one step at a time," your brain calms down, your body follows, and your energy shifts. This is why athletes use visualization and high performers talk to themselves out loud before a big moment. It's not strange, it's science, it's strategy. So, if you want to change your life, start with your voice. Not the one you use in public, but the one no one hears. That's the voice that matters most. That's the one shaping your confidence, your courage, and your capacity to grow. For the next 3 days, speak to yourself like someone worth fighting for, like someone who matters, like someone you're rooting for. Because when you change the way you talk to yourself, you change what you believe about yourself. And when that belief shifts, everything in your life begins to follow. Your brain believes what you tell it. This isn't just a feel-good slogan, it's neuroscience. The way you talk to yourself, the thoughts you think and the stories you repeat every day, are literally shaping the structure and function of your brain. Every time you have a thought, your brain fires a series of neurons. And when you repeat that thought, those neural pathways get stronger. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on repetition. That means whatever you say to yourself the most becomes your reality, whether it's true or not. Most of us aren't even aware of the narrative we're feeding our brain. We wake up in the morning and the thoughts start rolling in, "I'm so tired. Today's going to be stressful. I have so much to do. I can't handle it. I'm behind again. And you don't stop to question or interrupt it, you just accept it as fact. But those words, those unchallenged, automatic thoughts, become instructions. Your brain listens, it responds, and it starts acting on that belief. If you tell yourself you're overwhelmed, your brain goes, "Okay, we're overwhelmed," and activates your stress response. Your body tenses, your focus narrows, and your confidence drops, all because of a sentence you said in your own head. Think about this. If you walked around all day telling a child, "You're a failure. You can't do anything right. Nobody likes you," how would they feel? How would they behave? Eventually, they'd start to believe it. They'd shrink, stop trying, and doubt themselves constantly. That sounds like abuse, right? And yet, many of us talk to ourselves that way every single day. We say things like, "I'm not good enough. I always mess up. I'll never change," and we don't even think twice. But the impact is the same. That inner voice shapes your self-image, and your self-image drives your behavior. Here's where the science gets even more powerful. Your brain has something called the reticular activating system, RAS. It's like a filter that decides what information your brain should focus on, and you program that filter with your thoughts. So, if you keep telling yourself, "I'm not worthy," your brain will actually start looking for proof to back that up. It will tune into moments that reinforce that story and filter out anything that contradicts it. But if you start saying, "I'm capable, I'm learning, I can do this," guess what happens? Your brain starts looking for evidence of that too. It begins to notice your small wins, it spots opportunities, and it opens up possibilities you wouldn't have seen otherwise. This is why changing your self-talk is such a powerful tool. You're not just thinking positively, you're literally training your brain to work for you instead of against you. And it doesn't have to be a fake pep talk. You don't need to lie to yourself or pretend everything's perfect. That's not the goal. The goal is to choose thoughts that are useful, supportive, and grounded. Instead of, "I'm not ready," you say, "I'm nervous, and I can still take the next step." Instead of, "I always mess this up," you say, "I've learned from the past and I'm getting better." It's not about being delusional, it's about being deliberate. And here's something else most people don't realize. Your brain loves habits. It craves repetition. That's why so many of your negative thoughts feel automatic, because they are. They've been rehearsed so many times they've become your default. But that also means you can train a new default. You can choose a better script. And yes, at first it will feel awkward. Your brain might resist. But if you stick with it for even a few days, you'll start to feel the shift. You'll start to notice how often that old narrative pops up and how much power you have to rewrite it. The most powerful belief you can hold is this: I can change the way I think. Because once you believe that, everything else opens up. You stop being a prisoner of your past. You stop being defined by your mistakes. You stop waiting for permission, and you start becoming the person you were meant to be. The brain you've got is listening. Every word you say to yourself is either programming you to shrink or preparing you to grow. So speak like someone who's building a better future, because your brain will believe it and your life will start to reflect it. You don't need a full month or a 90-day challenge to start changing your life. Just 3 days. That's it. 3 days of intentional, deliberate effort can interrupt a mental pattern you've been stuck in for years. The reason this works is that most of what holds you back isn't your ability, your talent, or your circumstances. It's your autopilot. It's the default programming in your brain that runs the same limiting thoughts over and over. But the moment you become aware of those thoughts and decide to shift them, even slightly, you begin to break the cycle. Most people underestimate the power of short-term commitment. They think change has to be massive and long-term to count. But in reality, your brain just needs a pattern interrupt. Something different, something new, something that disrupts the routine and signals to your mind that we're not doing things the old way anymore. And 3 days is the perfect window. It's short enough to feel doable but long enough to create momentum. You can handle 3 days. You've pushed through harder things before. You've shown up for people. You've survived chaos. 3 days of talking to yourself differently? You can do that. So what happens when you commit to this? Let's say for the next 3 days, You become the guardian of your own mind. You pay attention to the thoughts that come up. When you catch yourself thinking, I can't do this, you stop and say, no, that's not helping. I can do hard things. When your brain says, I'm so far behind, you say, I'm making progress, one step at a time. When that familiar voice whispers, you're not enough, you say, I am learning. I am growing. I am worthy. And you don't just say it once. You repeat it over and over because repetition is how you rewire. And here's where the magic starts. Your energy begins to shift. You feel a little more in control, a little more hopeful. That shift in thought leads to a shift in behavior. Instead of procrastinating, you take action. Instead of spiraling, you take a breath. Instead of hiding, you speak up. It might feel small at first, but those tiny shifts, they stack. One small win leads to another. You start building proof that you can think differently, show up differently, and be different. This doesn't require perfection. You're not going to silence all your negative thoughts in 3 days. That's not the goal. The goal is awareness. The goal is to interrupt the cycle. Most of your thoughts aren't even conscious, they're habits. But the moment you become aware of a limiting belief, you gain power over it. And that awareness creates space for choice. You can choose a different thought, a better one, a more empowering one. And when you do that repeatedly, even just for a few days, your brain starts to adapt. It says, oh, this is how we think now. Okay. It starts building new neural connections to support this new way of being. Let's be real. This won't always feel easy. Your old thoughts are comfortable and familiar. They've been with you for a long time. So when you start changing the way you talk to yourself, your brain might push back. It might say, this isn't true. That's normal. Change always feels uncomfortable at first. But just because a thought feels familiar doesn't mean it's right. And just because a new thought feels uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong. Growth lives in that discomfort. And if you lean into it for 3 days, you'll prove to yourself that change is possible. One of the biggest lies we believe is that we have to feel ready before we can act. But the truth is, action comes before belief. You don't wait to feel confident. You act, and confidence follows. You don't wait to feel worthy. You speak to yourself with kindness, and over time, worthiness takes root. This is why 3 days of intentional self-talk is so powerful. You're not waiting for your life to change. You're changing the way you speak now and watching your life respond. So, are you willing to try just 3 days? 3 days of catching yourself when the self-doubt creeps in. 3 days of choosing a better thought. 3 days of speaking to yourself like someone you love. Not forever, just today, tomorrow, and the next day. That's where transformation begins. Not in some far-off future, but right here, in the words you say to yourself, one moment at a time. 3 days, that's all it takes to start changing everything. Affirmations can feel fake. That's the honest truth. You stand in front of a mirror saying, I am powerful. I am successful. I am unstoppable. And a part of your brain is like, no, you're not. You didn't even return that email you were avoiding. You feel anxious. You're nowhere near where you want to be. And that disconnect, that's why affirmations don't always work. If the words you're saying don't feel honest, your brain will reject them. That's why instead of repeating lofty affirmations, you need something that actually lands, something real, something grounded. That's where power statements come in. Power statements are different. They're not about pretending, they're about reclaiming. They're built on truth, on your ability to keep going, on your willingness to try. And most importantly, they speak to where you are right now, not where you wish you were. A power statement doesn't have to be complicated or dramatic. It just has to be believable. It has to be something that cuts through the noise in your head and reminds you of who you are and what you're capable of, even when things feel overwhelming. Take this one for example, I can handle this. It's not glamorous or over the top, but it's strong and grounded. When you're facing something hard, anxiety, stress, a tough decision, that one sentence gives you something to stand on. Because the truth is, you can handle it. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not all at once, but you can face the next moment. You can take the next step. And your brain responds to that. When you say, I can handle this, You trigger a sense of stability. You quiet the chaos. You center yourself in strength instead of fear. Or try this one: I've done hard things before. That's not wishful thinking, that's fact. Think about your life. You've survived loss. You've overcome failure. You've pushed through moments where you didn't think you could make it, and you did. So when you face something new that scares you, this isn't your first time in the fire. Reminding yourself of that is powerful. It reconnects you to your resilience. It grounds you in your own history. You're not starting from zero, you're standing on everything you've already been through. Here's another one: I'm figuring it out. That one is gold because it gives you permission to not have all the answers. You're not saying, I have it all together, you're saying, I'm in the process. And the brain loves progress. It doesn't need perfection to feel safe, it needs movement. So when you tell yourself, I'm figuring it out, your brain says, okay, we're learning. We're growing. We're not stuck. That one sentence shifts you out of defeat and into curiosity, out of shame and into action. The key with power statements is that they're anchored in effort, not outcome. You're not declaring, I'm already there. You're reminding yourself, I'm doing the work. I'm showing up. I'm becoming. That's what makes them so effective, because the brain doesn't need you to lie. It needs you to lead. You lead with honesty, with compassion, with strength. And every time you repeat one of these statements, you're reinforcing a new identity. Someone who doesn't give up, someone who faces things, someone who is becoming who they're meant to be. And yes, it will feel weird at first. Saying these things out loud might feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to tearing yourself down. But that's exactly why you need to say them. You've been rehearsing self-doubt for years. Of course, confidence feels foreign. But every time you speak a power statement, you're interrupting the old programming. You're planting a seed. And the more you repeat it, the more that seed grows. You start to carry yourself differently. You make different choices. You recover faster when things go sideways. So stop worrying about whether you believe the words perfectly. Just focus on whether they help. Do they ground you? Do they calm you? Do they give you just enough courage to keep going? That's the measure. That's how you know it's working. And over time, those simple, strong statements become your internal compass. They guide you back to yourself, back to your strength, back to your purpose. You don't need to say you're a superhero. Just say, I can handle this. Just say, I'm figuring it out. Just say, I've done hard things before and I can do this too, because you can. You always could. You just needed the right words to remind you. You can't change your life without changing your habits. And one of the most overlooked habits is how you talk to yourself in the quiet moments. The mornings, the moments of frustration, the late nights when no one else is around. That inner voice becomes the rhythm of your day, and most people let it run wild. But if you take just 3 days to intentionally shape that voice, you start creating a habit loop that shifts everything. That's not just motivation, it's neuroscience. Let's break it down. Your brain thrives on repetition. The more often you do something, the more efficient your brain becomes at doing it. That's how habits form. You don't have to think about brushing your teeth or tying your shoes because your brain has hardwired those actions. The same thing happens with thoughts. If you constantly think, I'm not enough, your brain gets really good at defaulting to that belief. It becomes your emotional reflex. But when you start talking to yourself with intention, even for a few days,